Hello and welcome to the Fearless Ones podcast, where we build fearless people who build fearless communities that builds a fearless generation. Matt Ham and Kevin Adams with you on this wonderful Friday. Kevo, what's up, buddy?
Hey man, well, the waves are up a little bit.
Yeah, I think did I see you probably know more better than I do because you might watch it. They're expecting some tropical stuff to maybe blow it up further into next week?
I have a hunter, and
Literally,
hunt,
like
yeah, and Hunter is a weather guru. Keeps me up on it. Often drives 45 minutes to come surf with me for 45 minutes and then leave. And that happened this morning. But I don't know the answer to that. But I know that we had some fun, and then we saw a little critter out there.
oh yeah.
So
I'm glad
yeah,
it was you and not me. How he
yeah,
waving at you from the beach.
yeah. He saw it, and but we both had some good rides, and but anyway, yeah, it's a great day, and it's a little overcast, but no complaints. All good. It's good to be
Yeah.
doing this. How about you? How's your week been
Yeah, good,
overall?
man. The kids are back in school. It's kind of that time of year for everybody, so we're starting to get into the normalcy of the fall school routine. So that's there's transition in that, right? There's always this transition moment, but it's been good.
Yeah,
We kicked back Faith and Business kicked back off in Raleigh yesterday. Had a great crowd. Our community up there was good. So, man, we're a lot of cool stuff going on, dude. I'm just so excited for everything that we've got going on as an organization, both us, but also our community, like everything
yeah,
that's happening for the people around us. Just a lot of exciting stuff, man. A lot of new things being born. And it just feels like that alignment, the dot connection is starting to happen in greater measure. So that's encouraging.
yeah, for sure. Well, the next phase for us is that exactly right, and we've got a lot of good fruit, and now it's time to work on community and. It's more of a following, not our following. It's more of us always continuing to follow and understand the landscape, and that's what we're doing. But a lot of good things happening. In fact, here's another. I have to say this the right way, but uh, my future son-in-law was telling me the other day. He says, there's a guy that comes in to the coffee shop with a Fearless shirt on. He says, "Do you know him?" And I'm like, so this morning, I guess it happened again, and he sends me, a small, very short video, which is kind of weird, but I just was like, "Thanks, man." And I said, "No, I do not know the guy," and I'm so excited that I don't know him
That's
because
awesome.
it means we're having an impact, we're putting a dent, and so I was really glad that I didn't know him.
That's awesome.
We're getting beyond friends and family
That's
finally.
that's right, man. Breaking out of the inner
So
sphere, right? Well,
yeah,
now you got
yeah,
to send it to me too, because now I'm curious. Yeah, send me the video now.
yeah.
And
I
so
will.
be aware, everyone. If we see you with the fearless shirt on, we will video you in public.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
So
man.
no creepy stuff, but just it's more of an encouragement. But it's being in Raleigh is a big deal, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It's just the way God works. It's slow and but man, is it good, and more fruit is developing. So community is a big deal, and I think that's a good place to start.
Well, I want to say one thing, Kev, to just to point this
Yeah,
proof of
sure.
concept thing. I remember back on when we first started the show, one of the first lessons I think that you talked about a lot was the idea that a table was an idea before it was ever a table. And then after the table is gone, it will
Yeah,
be the idea will still be there, right?
that's
And
right.
it's just wild that a year ago, right now, because we're in what, August? Yeah, a year ago
Hmm.
today, Fearless T-shirts were simply an idea. There
That's right.
none existed. They were not printed yet.
Right.
And then here a year later, you've got somebody sending us a picture of someone wearing a shirt in a local, coffee shop or whatever. So that just speaks
That's
proof of
right.
concept to everything we teach everybody. This isn't some pie in the sky, philosophical, oh, it's too deep, it's too, no,
Right.
it's true, it's real, and it's waiting on you to get into it. Going back to a couple weeks ago when you said
Yeah.
perhaps God's waiting on you. So what's your idea that's an idea now that somebody will be, seeing the fruit from a year from now? Just a little side encouragement thing to tie that together.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we prepped for this today, but one of the things I had mentioned, and I forgot about it, so it's on me. But um, we need to send this out to our community, and we're kind of editing it a little bit. But there is a video, and I sent it to you the other day. But I've shown a few people. Obviously, I sent it to you first, and you and Holly. But Riley made it. But it's of her husband and his just precious, amazing heart. And everybody I've shown that video to, it's him talking about Fearless Farm, but it's him, it's his personality, it's his heart, and it comes through so well. And I showed it to a fellow the other day, and he's like, man, that right there, if you don't have that on your website, you need to put it on there.
Yeah.
And my point is that we don't have to, I don't want to go too far with this because we don't have the video to show necessarily. I had hoped to show it maybe on our show, but people listen and watch it, who knows. But the point of it is that this guy's a perfect example of somebody just a little while ago didn't know really what he believed, and God made him, and he's such a unique, wonderful human being. But he chose to follow the things that he was seeing, the example, and I'll I will say my daughter was key in that, but here we are, down the road. I got a chance to baptize him in the ocean, and man, I love him. He's just like a son to me. And here he is now. He's getting to live out the thing that God put in his heart and grow. He's growing stuff, and their backyard was weeds. And I asked him about 8 or 9 months ago, what you gonna grow back there? And that's the start of Fearless Farm. So he now can see that just in a year, we're going to have that property, and things are starting to converge together. My heart about it is just to see people believing, because once you get it, once you start to believe,
Yes.
it's coming. It's
Yeah.
coming. And so that's a good example of it. You can really feel it come through because it's so real. But we got lots of examples of that. We got to help people see that.
It's so cool to, again, right before we jumped on the show today, I had a coffee with a fella that was kind of recommended to connect from another guy that we've been walking with for a number of years. And his question was, well, how do I get started? Just like you said, how do I get started? And, I used the analogy, the visualization that you taught me years ago. You said, Matt, imagine you have these two fields, and what's your favorite vegetable, right? Or your favorite fruit, and I said strawberries, right? And you're like, what's
That's
something
right.
that you kind of like that, and I said, cantaloupe or blueberries or whatever. And you said, you've got to be faithful in the blueberry field, the cantaloupe field. You've got to be, a good steward of what you've been given, but you have to go over here and plant a strawberry seed every now and again, right? And use that analogy or whatever. And so mentioning about Attilio and all, it's just beautiful. And man, it's just so humbling when you see God doing everything he said he was going to do. And the stuff that we're pursuing is not a pipe dream. It's not some, it's the essence of truth and how we were created to live. And God's kingdom on the earth will be brought forth. It's already done in heaven. We just got to meet up with it. And so
that's right.
It's exciting stuff, man. So
yeah. So everything comes in stages and phases. Just like to me, it's so much more. Evangelism is like fishing, right? And we see that in scripture, and that's really an important metaphor. But discipleship making disciples. Is much more like it's agriculture. It's
Hmm.
growing. It's seed. We see that in Scripture a lot. So, that's where we focused is to make disciples, and I think it's the season we're in. Making disciples brings revival. Revival is about making disciples. So let's set aside the Christian words. They're good scriptural words, but let's dig in now because we have our foundation built, and we've got some amazing things happening. But you have to know where to look to see them. And that's what we're talking about today. So the title is not a new concept, and we've talked about it in different ways. I don't know that we've ever used it as a title, but it seemed appropriate today as maybe an encouragement and a good teaching. But wherever passion and compassion really in your heart, wherever they meet, there is a why. Everybody wants to know why, So that is something God wants us to know. What he does not want us to know up front is how. And it's very simple. As soon as you learn to let go of that, it's no different than saying walk by faith, not by sight. But people have heard that so much, they don't really understand how to apply it.
Mm.
So when I say God is the how, and when we say that and teach that, it helps people enter in the same room through a different keyhole. And it's good because, it's kind of time for that. So,
Well, to that kind of title and topic is so many people are saying, and this has even become, like we've talked about this, the why. Why am I still here after I've been saved? Right?
yeah,
I'm trying
right.
to find my why.
Hmm.
Start with why, like even that kind of phraseology. So I love how you took it a step deeper and you said, why is going to be present whenever passion and compassion meet, so it's
That's right.
it's it's taking it. So like one of the things that I think I put in the title today is like there is a way to discover the why. There is a process to
Hmm.
of discovering the why. So that's what we're talking about today, and this
Yeah,
is where it begins.
that's right. Yeah, and there's a lot of things I want to be able to tie together, and they sometimes they get discombobbled. But especially with me, I just process very slowly. And the way I process is by speaking and talking, and so a lot of times people zone out. But if you bear with me, it's always worth it, hopefully. So but trying to follow a simple process is very helpful to people. So trying to go slow and walk through this. So one of the let's talk about the kind of obstacle first, and then we'll get into what the overcoming that, and then how you move forward. One of the things, and this is just something I ran into this week, a young guy I work with fairly regularly enough, but he wanted to talk more about sin, and kind of was wanting to know, well, don't we need to talk more about sin? And look, I'm definitely not a guy who thinks everything's peaches and cream and roses, and sin has a place, right? It is a very important aspect to understand. But I also think that being a Christian is not a multitask operation or assignment. You can't multitask. In
Mhm.
fact, multitask is there's something in that for people. I think people can juggle a couple of things, but your brain cannot focus on two things at once. I saw an MIT study once that proved it, and they showed the utter lack of productivity when young students were trying to do two things at once. You can't do it as well as doing one thing at a time. So God did that on purpose. So following Jesus is not a multitask uh, assignment. It just is not. All right. Following him means there is process. Okay. The early part of that, there's a reckoning that happens. We have to understand that, it's either over, it's death, or you get to be a unique expression, a vessel of the living God. Pablo Escobar used to say, and I love bringing the salt into this, the goofy, crazy stuff, but he used to say, plata or plomo, silver or lead, and I'm not comparing God to that goon, but the point is, it's all or none with God.
Yeah.
He gives us a window, and he gives us grace and mercy, but this guy used to bribe people, or he'll kill your whole family.
Yeah.
And go with the humor of this. I'm not at all comparing. I'm just saying, this guy had a lot of power, and he would kill your whole family, or he would make you rich. You decide, right? So
Mm.
just take that idea, not the fun part of it. I'm goofing around, but think about that. God gives us plenty of time, but if we cannot, my point in all this is to say we cannot focus on our own sin and get on with the work that passes through us. Our job is to become a unique expression of God's will. And if we are excited about that and encouraged by that, and recognizing that he has freed us from sin, we don't need to walk around calling ourselves sinners all the time. In fact, I would disagree with that. It doesn't mean we weren't defeated by it, but God has freed us from it. That's why in Jeremiah you see, the heart is desperately wicked above all things, but now our heart's redeemed. It means our job is to guard it. So anyway, not to get too deep into that, but I just wanted to say there's an obstacle there for a lot of people. Don't we need to talk more about sin? Well, I'll tell you what, the world, absolutely. It needs to come to that place and recognize the corrupt thing that's out there. But to get on with the work, if you're being discipled, you have to look forward to why God put you here. You can't focus on your why while you're focusing on your sin or your failure. God wanted you to know about it. He doesn't want you to live there. And that's the difference.
That is such as you tie that whole thought together, you went down the path, came back around, it's so
I do that.
you do. But again, I've listened to you enough and see the whole, the trajectory and just the beauty of how you paint the imagery of the idea that's being birthed here. And, going back to this concept of wherever passion and compassion meet, there is a why. So many people are not capable. They're capable, but they're not pursuing their why because they're focusing on their sin. And one of the great errors of the Western Christian model is it highlights and elevates the sin instead of the son or daughter that is born out of a true-hearted, surrendered following of Jesus. And what the biblical principle or the biblical story that comes to mind here, Kev, is the prostitute when she's caught in prostitution, which a lot of people think that was Mary Magdalene, and whether it was or not, it doesn't matter. Jesus looked at her and did not condemn her in it, but he said, "Go and sin no more."
That's right.
So he used her moment of being caught in the sin, and he separated the sin from her identity. He didn't say, anything about her being a sinner. He said, "Go and sin no more." So he separated the sin from her identity, and he told her to move forward.
That's right.
And that's where people miss the call and therefore get distracted, discouraged, and focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah. And listen, there's a lot of reasons people hyper focus in one area or another. And some of it's just traumatic, stronghold behavior patterns, whatever. But the bottom line is you do have to work on that. And that's what the mentoring program and all that's about. But just for this thing, you have to lay out some direction and help people understand, where does God want you? Where does he want your mind focused? Where does he want your steps and your direction? And so, I think so we've talked about, there's no multitask here. You can't be double-minded. That's scripture, right?
Yes.
Don't be tossed about like the waves. So, you've got to focus on the one thing, and that is first and foremost the thing that Jesus wants you to focus on, and that means the Father and the Father's will and his heart and why he put you here.
Mm.
You see, you can build a house on this, and you can't get around it. And that's why I feel, I'm very convicted and confident in my words. Maybe it sounds arrogant. It's not. It's meant to be tender, but it's very, very. It's just conviction. So,
Mm.
but that's what Jesus wants us to focus on. It's very clear in Scripture. You have to get in there and eat it and consume the Word like bread. Like the bread of life that it is. You have to consume it like it's the only thing left in your cupboard.
Mm.
That doesn't mean you got to sit and read it the way everybody else does. It means you got to get it in you. The more you get it in you, the more it begins to open your spirit up, and you start to understand what God's saying and doing in the landscape. So that's a big picture, but the bottom line is, if we come back around, I want to get to passion and compassion part, but while we're still talking about the obstacle, I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, but basically we have to be doers, not just hearers.
Mm.
So doers of the word is how we establish that direction. And I want to redefine that a little bit, because I think a lot of times people think, oh, that's a bunch of rule following. And that's not really the right mentality in my view. So we want to talk about what that means, and then keep building that house up till we get to passion, compassion in the why part. So, we know the verse, I don't have it in front of me, but be doers of the word, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means the question becomes, what is a doer?
Mm.
So, that's the question I want people to listen to or chew on a little bit for yourself. What is a doer of the word? What does that mean? Certainly you have to read it, understand it, take it in your ears and eyes and get it into your heart. But what does it mean to actually be a doer of the word? And, feel free to jump in as you will.
Well, it's fun. It's funny because, like, I love the fact that culture tries to tell us what that means,
Yeah,
and that's where
right.
people have gone wrong. It's
Yeah,
like, you're a doer of the word if you do this,
right.
this, 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 right?
Yes.
And and they try to tie it in with other scriptures about, caring for the least of these and all this kind of stuff. So then
Right.
this Christianity becomes this thing where it's all about, what I mean, these
Yeah.
these checklists of, are you doing these things? I mean, you could be an awful person who's not, in any way honoring the Father or listening to the Father's voice, but you sure could be, feeding somebody who's hungry or, whatever. And so people try to relegate their faith to a duty or to a service, and they miss the Father's
Right.
heart.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how people say, well, I'm a person of action and not words. And I think Jesus spent a whole lot of time with words. Teaching is words. What we're doing right now is doing, and it's words.
Yes.
So I don't agree with all that kind of. You can't really separate it. But being a doer of the word basically means, you know, doing God's will. So you got to keep asking questions. You can't just stop there, and that's the problem. Is people just stop there because it's like they want to check it off and be done with it. That's human nature.
Mm.
That's from your neck up, right? That's walking by sight. That's the faith is the dividing line. You got the two parallel lines, and one gets off God's will and our faith. One gets off just a little bit, and they're going opposite directions. It's the same, and I'll say this briefly, but it's the same Walking by sight is what cut Michael Jordan from that high school team. Walking by sight is what failed Elvis Presley, the one subject he failed. Guess what it was?
Music.
Yeah, yes. His music teacher failed him, said, "You just don't have it." I mean, this is what happens. These, whether you like those guys or not, they are iconic figures. They're just people, but they are great, well-known individuals who did change the world. They put a dent in it. And it doesn't matter if you don't like them or none of that matters. What matters is they've had great influence because the thing in them overcame the thing outside of them, that
Mm,
what people said. And if you don't understand that about your own life, then
mm,
you will not accomplish the thing God set you out to do. So,
mm,
these two guys are great examples. Um, again, it's not about whether we like them or not. It's more about, did they do the thing? And they did. So, and we see that in Scripture. Every breakthrough comes at the behest of God's will, which means it followed that over the thing it sees. Elijah, it made no sense to go around the walls of Jericho and blow the horn. And I mean, that's silly, right? But
yeah.
it's not, because God said do it.
Right.
So doers of the word means that you are a follower, but you're excited about God's will. It's not. It's like saying you go from immaturity of going, well, I know God's timing, that's frustrating, to you get to, well, I'm learning to trust His timing and all that. You get to a point where you go, man, His timing, I want it. I'm craving it. And
Hmm.
that's the difference between working hard and following hard.
Mm,
Our job is not, the goal is not to become isn't to work, it isn't so much to work hard, but it's to learn to follow hard. Follow Jesus. That's what it means, right? So we got to be great followers
mm,
of His.
yeah.
And that's doing the word. The rest of it starts to get really neat and unique and very specific,
Yeah.
you
The
know?
the the fellow that I was meeting with this morning, he asked me as we were leaving, he said, "How am I going to know that I'm on the right path? How am I going to know?" Right? He was very logical, which a lot of people are there, right? They're looking
Sure.
for logic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I said two things. I don't know if it was the right thing to say, but it's what I had in the moment. So I said
Sure.
it. One was I said, "You will have a deep sense of joy that you cannot shake." And number two, people will call you crazy.
That's
If
right.
if people call you crazy and you can't escape the joy that it brings you, not the joy from what people say about it, but just this,
Yeah.
man, it's just fulfilled, you know? I said, then you'll know that
Right.
you're moving down the right path.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would agree with that. There's some other descriptors, peace. There's a lot, but that's right. It's about your job isn't to understand everything. It's to understand. You got to go to the vision, the puzzle box. You got to
Mhm.
start to see it, and then you got to start working the pieces. And so that falls right in line with it. You might put a little piece over here and some over here, but the bottom line is, are you moving in the right direction? And we've got to get away from the mentality of, I've got to carry this. The
Mm.
weight of my sin has, I'm just a beggar wanting some bread on a donkey. You have to go through that if you are corrupt and knowingly, in that place. Uh, Arrogance needs its butt kicked,
Yes.
and Jesus did not put up with it. But once you understand that you have that, and God starts to chip away at you, and as long as your heart is willing, that's a willing heart. You become a doer of the word. So coming back around to some of these uh, sort of layers to get into this. One of the things I wanted to mention was I've already mentioned this, but there's only one direction, and that's forward motion,
Mm,
forward motion. So you can't keep going back and wallowing,
mm.
or if you're from the South, which we always say wallering,
Waller.
go waller, don't waller in your, if God's freed you, then start to live free.
Mm,
But there's only one direction here. I mean, there is forward motion. It's like the prodigal son. I mean, the prodigal son didn't need to go back and wallow in what he did. He was ready. He was prepared.
yes.
And God was, if you look at it from a father son, God with us children, he has everything for us.
Mhm.
He's not a genie. He's our father, and he wants us to carry out his will. That's what any kind of a prince or princess would do if their father's the king. They're going to carry out his will and be an extension of that. So it sounds too good to be true, but it's not. And the more you step into it, the more he confirms it. You see what you're hoping to see. Now that gets back to the definition of faith. So there's only one direction, and it's forward motion. I just want to get that thought out there. So anytime you start getting beat up or knocked around, or the enemy's beating on you and trying to get your attention away, your job isn't to argue with the enemy. Your job is to stay focused
Mm.
on the king and what he wants to do through you. All right, so now all this has been set up in a long-winded foundational way. This now helps us understand that it's not selfish to begin to focus on us.
Mm.
God paid the price, right? Everything, the highest price that could be paid for Matt, Kevin, and anyone who's willing. So that makes us priceless to him. That means if we don't honor who we are, then we are dishonoring who he is.
Mm.
He
Mm.
made us, right? So you cannot get around this stuff. You can't. And I've spent years and years and years just focused on this. And I'm telling you from my own experience, not some high-minded place. I'm speaking eye level to everybody. But I had to go through this. And there is nothing like the living God. He's so good. But you've got to taste it. You have to step into it to taste it. So that's where I'm coming from. But think about it. This gets back to the idea of, and I jotted some of these down, so I'm just going to read one. If you are, I think this was the text we sent out this morning. If you are a one-off creation, you do not have to compete. Now, it says it a little differently in the text. I think it says, I'm just going to pull it up. If I can get my phone open here. Or you can read it if you got it.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Yeah, go ahead and read that text.
Yeah.
Put the years.
I got it.
I messed it up.
Yeah. It says, if God put you here now, not 200 years ago or 200 years from now, but exactly right now, then there is most certainly a specific need for you, a problem only you can solve right here, precisely right now. Are you
Yeah.
actively following where this idea takes you?
Yeah, and Matt, I don't think that people are.
No.
And so that's why we need to get to the why part. But God is also setting the stage right now for so many people to come to him and to live this out. And we're gonna have that.
Yeah.
We don't know the timing and all that, and we can talk about the world and these crazy people that have kind of hijacked everything, but it's just a moment. The other side of this is you are in it maybe better than any time in history going to get to live out who you are. And I think it's why we're here teaching this right now. I believe that with everything in me.
Yeah.
So you got to slow down and really take that text in.
Mm-hmm.
Really think about it. God put you here right now. Right now. And if you don't believe and you just want to keep living, just go to church, put a little money in the plate and hear a good sermon and move on, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to start to say my life belongs to God and I want to live out everything he made me to accomplish, that's it. This is your game field. Right now, you're here. You got breath in your lungs, you have talent, gifts, skills, opportunity, context, all of it, and you have others who believe the same thing. What does that look like? What does that look like? So, if God puts you here now, then there is most certainly a need for you to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now what happens is people get excited, and then you'll hear somebody go, well, I'm gonna start my own little business and all that. But then what happens? The world creeps back in. So if you feel like you get to that point, well, you got to start doing social media. You got to do this. You got to reach people. You got to do this and this. And what you get into is this idea that, well, all you're doing now is just trying to peddle knowledge or some kind of information from one person to the next. So if you're a health coach or if you're making stuff or whatever, it's just about, I just want to, I want to be a billboard, instead of realizing that knowledge is easily duplicated. We're making some hot sauce, and man, Attilio's recipe is beautiful. It's so good. But there's millions of hot sauces, or thousands maybe. It's just like there's millions of beers out there. You can't compete. So we got to get rid of the idea of competition. Mm-hmm. It's not from Jesus. And I'm saying it, I'm going to keep saying it. Competition is not what God wants for you. So I'm not talking about best practices in business transactions. I'm talking about where your heart is. We're building the foundation from the ground up. You got to stay there until you master it. And then you can begin to enter back into some best practices so that the thing has the right direction, right? That one direction. Yeah,
well,
go ahead.
The reality is that so many people have the inspiration from God, like the revelation, the awakening, the moment they get the seed, right?
Yeah.
But then they start to apply the world's wisdom to that seed, right? It's like to me, it's like God gives you the revelation, He gives you the seed, He gives you the pure thing, and you plant it, but then you're watering it with toxic water.
Yeah.
It's like, you're never going to grow anything if you're trying to apply worldly practices to kingdom concepts. And so, that's where we've gone astray, because, we try to infuse the world's wisdom into God's kingdom, and it never works that way. And that's where we start to place expectations on it. We start to, demand that it grow, as you always say. We start to, and what we do is we're strangling out the reality of that actually bearing fruit. And it's interesting. I said this at Faith in Business yesterday. Mm-hmm. I asked them, I said, we were talking about Joshua and crossing the Jordan, and how God gave them specific instructions when crossing the Jordan to stay 2,000 cubits. It's like a half a mile behind the ark. And it was this idea that you cannot outrun the presence of God. And that, God's presence has to lead you into your promise, and you have to co-labor and get wet and step in, right? And it was interesting because I closed it up and I asked him a question. I said, whose voice is loudest in your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, again, there's people who have these businesses and they're looking to their board of directors. They're looking to some social media guru. They're looking to whatever. And they don't take the time to go to the Father to say, what do you want me to do with this business?
That's right.
They refuse to invite Him into this scenario.
Yeah. And that's having one foot in the world and one foot. And I will say that I think God's kind of to a point where he's kind of done with that. It's
Yeah.
called being on the fence. It's kind of lukewarm, even by accident. It's
Hmm.
still you can't. It doesn't matter. It might matter in your salvation, but which is okay maybe. But you're gonna miss out on the thing. The enemy can't unsave us. He can't unring a bell. He can't uncreate a new creation. If you're really God's, he can't take you away. But what he can do is distract you from that why. And he does it through fear and logic and all this other stuff. And if you don't develop the thing that's deeper, the inside out spirit of God living out through you, you can't do it. And you can argue all day and say, "Hey, I'm going to make money at this thing," or "What are you doing?" And I've been hearing that stuff for years, and I haven't missed a meal, and I've been rich and poor, truly. And I mean, there's nothing like God. I don't need. I put a yeah, but to man's stuff, but we don't beat them up when they say that. We realize they're not mature yet. They don't get it, so we help them see it. We have to set the example, and then we open our arms when they get there. And if they never do, we dust our feet off. But the bottom line to that part of the conversation, I think, is an example would be, there's a lot of one of the things we're trying to do is develop entrepreneurs. People can make a living by who God made them. And that's, to me, one of the ways you can define. God says you have a right to make a living by the gospel. So I think that when you understand fully the vessel idea, tear it down, he rebuilds it 3 days. He's setting an example for us. They didn't understand. We are a vessel. So when you think, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to get all these certifications, I'm going to learn all this stuff, that's great. But so is the next person and the next person and the next person. God did not make you to compete, but he did put you here. So what does that actually mean? It means, you are unique. So what you have to begin to understand and bring to everything is you. It's why we're not doing off the shelf stuff. We're not necessarily just saying, let's start another Bible study. And it's one of the reasons I just will not regurgitate stuff. I don't care about money. I just don't care about it. And but I feel like God's put something in me, and I know you feel the same way for you. And that right there is what we've got to bring, because that's what God put in us. And then the knowledge and all that stuff on top of that that's where the best practice is. And so it's like saying, I wrote this down earlier. It's like on a social aspect. Let's talk about, most people are like, you got to have social media. Well, I don't disagree with that, but you got to look at what are you trying to say with social media. And what I wrote down was, the job isn't to tell what we've got like a billboard. It's really to help people see the vessel that gives unique expression to God's will. In other words, who you are when you walk into the room, because you're a willing vessel for God's Spirit, but then it starts to take shape between God and you, because you're one body, you're one part of that body that He made just for that reason. And it's beautiful, and no one can compete with that. In other words, you are the best at it. It's like the Michael Jordan, Elvis Presley thing. Yeah, they might be heroic to some people or not to others, but we all have that uniqueness in us. So when we look at what am I bringing, there's plenty of great basketball players or plenty of great entertainers, but there's not many people who could argue one of the most famous people of all time outside of Jesus is Elvis Presley. There's more photos of him. There's more, and it's still going. Michael Jordan, similar, but in the world of sports. So who are you? Who are you? You've got to bring you to it. And it's not selfish. It's
Yeah.
not selfish. It's selfish to deny that, because that's what Jesus paid to free you to do while you're here. And if you're not doing it, you're not being a doer of the word. And that's why I said that earlier. I know it's a lot, but
No, I'm glad you went back to that place of it's not selfish. You said this earlier, Kevin. Um, you know, um, if you are not, where did I write it down? If you don't honor who you are, you cannot honor who God is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you said
right.
that earlier. And it's this concept just then is that it's not selfish to focus on who God made you to be. And I
That's
think
right.
so many people are living in this space where they've become convinced because the voice that's loudest is culture or their parents or their boss or whatever. Oh, you can't do that. There's no way that you can do that. That's not going to work. That's selfish. You know what I mean? How
Right.
dare you? You're forsaking your family.
Yeah.
You know, look at what
Yeah.
you've done. Blah, 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 blah. And yet we celebrate the people who pressed through that adversity.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's the most ironic thing in the world is on one hand we tell people you can't do this, and
That's
on the
right.
other hand we celebrate the ones that did. And so
Yeah.
it's double-minded, like you said. You can't be that
Yes.
way. And so
Yeah. That's right.
you know, I always think about I love Steve Harvey tells this, which I love him, by the way. I just think he has such
Yeah.
a great demeanor and he's hilarious and
Yeah.
he seems
I
to have
agree.
a reverence for God. But I love the story that he tells about the you know, he had an answering machine at his parents' house, like in their remember the garage, and he was a
Uh-huh.
traveling comedian trying to
Yeah.
make it, and he got a phone call that was on the answering machine at his parents' house, and he went there to pick it up and they said, Steve, can you come up to the Showtime at the Apollo? He was in Florida at the time
Mm.
and he had no way to get to New York because he didn't have the gas money to get up there. And he said he was getting ready to dial the guy to go, man, I don't have a way to get there. And he got a phone call from a local nightclub who said, hey, man, I need you to fill 3 spots. You know, and
Mm.
it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and he had to be in New York on Monday. And the money he made on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is what paid the gas to get him to New York on Monday. And he went on to host Showtime at the Apollo or whatever. And
Mm.
again, so everybody would have said, man, it can't happen. You don't have enough. You can't make it, right? But yet we celebrate the reality that God did because God had purpose on that guy's life. And
Yeah.
so that just needs to be something that begins to resonate in the hearts of people, that when
That's
you
right.
are courageous enough to follow, when you're fearless,
Hmm.
using our brand,
That's
when you're
right.
fearless enough to follow that thing, that is when the Lion of Judah comes alongside you and
Yeah.
begins to roar and part the
Yeah.
seas, man.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. You can't, you literally cannot move forward by sight. You
Mm.
have to move forward by faith. Now, it's just like best practices. It doesn't mean you don't need eyeballs, but it does mean that the blind guy still has to walk by faith,
Mhm.
you see. I mean, people will say, well, he's blind. He can't walk by sight anyway. Oh, no, you got to walk. You've got to get through that threshold and grab hold of God's Spirit. And you have to be a doer. You have to step in. That's what a doer is of the word. The word, you have to believe that this word is the truth. And you can't, well, red letters and, Constantine and history and man's taint. Yeah, that's like saying, whatever we did was somehow we sidetracked God. Woo, that's bullcrap. Total bullcrap. God's smarter, bigger, wiser, more powerful. It's a nuclear bomb and a knife fight. I mean, it's ridiculous. So God has it figured out. There is a landscape. Our job is to follow hard, to learn to follow hard, meaning letting go, follow, press in, ask, seek, knock, not work hard, grind it out, get social media, get it all figured out. No, you got to bring you, because you is the one thing that no bad economy, no corruption, no thing on this planet can remove. Who God made you to be, and He put you here right now. You better believe there's purpose in that. And so if you don't believe that, you're already in trouble. But if you'll start moving toward that, just day to day, moment by moment, and you will start seeing a harvest happen. You have to be patient, but we've been at this here. right here, you and me, for as a collective for 7 years, we're getting ready to go into a new 7-year season. Guess what? 2023 is going to be a big year, and we're getting ready to see a big, kind of climax between some good and evil stuff. But what's on the other side of that? So we've got to prepare people who know this and believe it. And guess what? We've got a really, really good community around us. It's loose, and we're trying to create some ways to get together more and all that. But going back to the point of the show today is when you are going into, we can wrap up with just this quick idea of passion and compassion. And there's other shows that deal with it if you want to get into it more. But if you, for example, are going to step into a new career, it doesn't mean you don't need some advertising or stuff like that. What it does mean is you better remember what you're bringing into that situation for people. What do you have to offer that no one else does? There's plenty of people playing basketball, singing songs, but there is only one Michael Jordan, and there was only one Elvis Presley, because they knew who they were and they stepped into it. So going to wrap it up, since we're getting close on time here, let's talk about the heart, because that's the transition point, right? The heart is the core between the physical and the spiritual. It's part of the soul. It's the emotional, the creative, the personality, the gifts. All of that is in the seat, in the heart. So the top of the heart, passion. The bottom, this is just the way I say it, just to give it some form. The bottom of the heart, people say, from the bottom of my heart, I love you. Well, so I put it in that kind of order. But the top of the heart, passion, meaning things that the desires of your heart, things you love. Hunter was telling me this morning, he was talking about music and just the symphony he heard, and he's talking about doing his own, like with the guitar and stuff, or some neat things. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. I want to hear it. Passion. Okay. And then compassion. And please jump in. I know I'm rambling, but passion and compassion. What is compassion? That's for whom? It always involves other people, right? I mean, you might not step on a bug and that's compassionate, but we're talking about God puts us above all these things, so the birds of the air. So compassion is always about people. So passion is the desires of your heart, the things that you're good at, that you love to do, that you wouldn't take money to ever stop doing them. And then compassion is for whom you will do those things. That's where your why happens. So you have to practice these things. But if you don't know this, then you never do. You say, well, I got to get some money. I got to pay my bills. And one day never comes.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's hitting me. It's hitting me, Kevin, just in my own, I've mentioned this on the show before, the thing with like cleaning out my sports card collection. And it's something here that my son and I have recently connected on. Matthew, my oldest, and he's all about it, and I felt like that this was something that I was supposed to like do with him, and for me, there was a compassion element to it, to fathers who are struggling to connect with their sons, and it's like, find something that your son is into and do that thing with him, and I wanted to kind of do it as a way to like look at other dads and say, find something your son is into and go be into that thing with him, as a way to show compassion to him, but it's also as a way to kind of empower others. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so that to me was a cool moment this summer, just how the Lord kind of grabbed my heart. And what I'm having to do is keep my passion down, because I get all excited, like, Superman, go get this. And I'm just going, no, Matthew, we'll bring it down. And it's just, this is something fun that we can do together. But a great example of it has purpose to it. It's not just the thing, and that's what people are missing, man, is people are longing to connect the passion of their heart to the compassion element of their lives. And that purpose is where all of that kind of that why, that's where all of that comes together. But people have to know that that is only found when you, like you said earlier, we cannot have multiple focuses.
That's right.
We have to have a singular focus. And that focus has to be on our Father.
That's
And
right.
it has to be by faith, not by sight.
That's
And
right.
then that is what we do. We keep moving forward. And so I love how this is the most Kevinist show that we've had in a while. It's like you had all of these like dots here, and it's like whoop, they all just kind of came together.
Well, it's funny, man. I get in trouble with my the closest people to me, the people I love the most, and that includes you. They, familiarity. You get tired of, okay, come on. But we all have gifts, and that's one of my gifts is to be able to see it that way. And but I tell you what, man, everybody's got something beautiful in them that God put there. And if you go back and listen to some of our shows and go to those verses we continue to talk about,
Yeah.
God wants you not only to be His disciple, but you're also meant to go and make more.
Yeah.
And the best way, this is one of the biggest things, we'll wrap it up with this. You remember that passion in your example, and lots of others. Passion, and there's lots of them. They're puzzle pieces. It's not, we're coming into a time where it's not about working a job anymore. It's about being who you are and watching God provide for you so that you can continue to give who you are away, because you're that vessel, you're the conduit. He works through that. Guess what happens when you get around my son-in-law Attilio, and when he is talking about growing stuff and making food, dude, he will point right to Jesus. He may not say it directly or immediately, but he's being like Jesus to you. You can feel it. And you ask him at all, and he'll tell you, God is real and He loves you. Come on, let's go do it. However that looks for you, you've got to go there. And then you add best practices in. But all that said, think of it as being a doer of the word. Think of it, even I don't. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. But yeah, there's a verse in, I guess it's in Luke 13:26-27. It says, "Not everyone who calls me their Lord will get into the kingdom of heaven. Only the ones who obey my Father uh, in heaven will get in." Now that's kind of the contemporary version. And it says, "On the judgment day, many, or day of judgment, many will call me their Lord. They will say, we preached in your name, we forced out demons, and we worked many miracles. But I will tell them, I have nothing to do with you. Get out of my sight." Those people were doing a lots of doing, right?
Yes.
But they were not being like Jesus to people, which is really what being a doer of the word is.
Mm.
So my gift, your gift, we're one of a kind. We're one-off creations, and there's no fear. There's no competition. Focus on that. We're trying to help by setting the example. We're building business and ministry on this principle. But be encouraged, and remember, just take that extra step. Start to talk to God about the passion you have, the things that you love, and then the compassion. Who does your heart bend toward? What people do you love to help the most? And think about those kind of things, and you'll start seeing a Y shape up, and then take a step. Take a step. That's what this show is about today. So hopefully it all makes sense.
It's
And helps.
beautiful, man. It's beautiful, and I appreciate your time and effort and pouring out. Before we wrap up real quick, Kevin, I just want to throw this on the screen as a reminder to our viewers: fearlesstradingcompany.com/coffee. If you want to grab it, sorry, do that again. fearlesstradingcompany.com/coffee. If somebody wants to kind of get plugged in and start connecting with what we do, it's just a great little reminder. It's a way to get started and help us move the ball down the field and move the needle forward. And it's a great way to kind of get plugged into the community as well.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of coffee out there. There's lots of hot sauce. There's lots of stuff that we already do out there. If you just want that, and go get it. But if you want to help us, you want some great stuff, great products, you want to help us go and teach this to people and truly live out and be doers of the word in this season, then that's why we're selling stuff. Mm-hmm. That's what it's for. It's not about competing.
Yeah.
But it is good stuff too. So it's a win-win, win-win. So we ask for your support that way, or just make a donation, man, if you
Yeah,
want to, if you believe in it. And
absolutely. And we're
we
grateful.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're grateful for it. So thank you guys for tuning in today. Kev, as always, thanks for pouring out, man. And thank you guys for listening to the Fearless Ones podcast. And we will be back next week with more. Y'all be well.